let's go over some similarities between Jesus and Moses. Now, we read earlier in Exodus just what Moses had to go through. The time that he was raised, they were killing off the boys, the boy babies. And Moses escaped that fate. He escaped death. And does that sound just a little familiar? How about the contrast between the Old Testament covenant versus the New Testament covenant? What are the differences? That is powerful, isn't it? Moses died there. Big sparkly letters. Moses, the servant of God. Might as well be a placard on a big, nice wooden desk. And he spins around on his chair as you enter the office and you're reading this placard. Moses, the servant of God. Have you ever had that supreme treasure in your life that brings you joy, purpose, and fulfillment? Something that you just treasure. Something that can transform your day, transform your life, and it is so important to you. Well, what if I said that treasure is your loving God? Love the Lord, your God, with all your heart. Welcome back, everybody. And thank you for joining. If you are new, this is a weekly podcast where we study the Bible. We follow the Come Follow Me, and we are in Deuteronomy. And then the Pharisees asked Jesus, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And so Moses speaks to the Israelites. Listen obediently, do what you're told, so that you'll have a good life, a life of abundance and bounty, just as God promised. Attention, Israel, God, our God, God the one and only. Love God, your God, with your whole heart. Love him with all that's in you. Love him with all you've got. And I like to look at this connection here. There are so many times that Jesus speaks of Moses. And interestingly enough, there are also connections in Deuteronomy to Jesus. Because one of the many things that Moses and Jesus had in common is that things that they taught was not temporary. They taught the things that was the core of everything. We get reminded so often in the book of Deuteronomy to remember everything that they went through. And we can also remember things that we've been through and use these life lessons, just as Moses is commanding the Israelites to remember these things. And we can see Jesus in Deuteronomy 8. You may not see it right away. I know I sure did it. But check this out. We can see Jesus in living to have perfect trust in God. He demonstrates what true obedience looks like. When the Israelites could not, Jesus does. The 40 days in the wilderness, they could not. They could not do that with full love of God and with full obedience. And Jesus did. And we can take that lesson in how important it is to have that perfect trust and true obedience. And before we get any further, I have a quick question. Reading this book of Deuteronomy, I can't help but think, how many of us live intentionally? And when I say intentionally, what I'm trying to say is, how many of us get up in the morning with a purpose? How many of us go to work with a purpose? I know me, anyway, I used to just roll out of the bed, not think about what's going to happen, or more importantly, what I'm going to do, or how I'm going to live. And I just roll out the bed and go on with the day. But not so much anymore. So there are certain things that change when we give our life to Christ and we make that ultimate change. And living our lives is one of those. We're no longer rolling out of bed with no intention. We learn that we roll out of bed. Well, maybe I still roll out of bed, but I grudgingly roll out of bed. But I do that with purpose now. There are mornings where I'll just not want to get up early or nothing or have any encouragement or excitement for the day. But now, living with purpose and intention, there is an excitement, there is a purpose, is the word. That is. And so, how many of us live intentionally? Or how many of us love intentionally? How deep and strong is our love? Love for people, love for things, love for what we do. Do we have any love for what we do? Are we loving intentionally? Are we going to work intentionally? Because if we are living intentionally and if we are loving intentionally, I would think that we're working intentionally, and all of these things would bring great blessings. Kind of reminds me of the book of Deuteronomy, which we are studying, when we get reminded of the two most important commandments. Love thy God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your might, and also to love your neighbors. Those two things is like you follow those two things and you follow the rest of the 10 commandments. And that's what reminds me of living intentionally. If we do those little things, so much of our day, so much of our lives would be transformed. Everything down to the way that we walk. How do we walk? Are we walking with a purpose, or are we walking just head down, slowly? We don't know or care where we're going, what we're gonna do when we get there, who we're gonna meet. We're just zombie. Or are we walking with that strut? Are we walking with that stride, with that purpose throughout our day? Because we are living intentional. And also, before we get any further into this week's Bible study of Deuteronomy, there were a few things that threw me off, and I had to really study these and get some answers, because I wanted to share these answers, because I thought that other people would struggle with this too. Hopefully I'm not the only one on this struggle bus. So what I had difficulty with in these chapters, actually something that I've struggled with beginning since Genesis, and that is the word Israel or Israelites, or even modern day scriptures that the word Israel or Israelites come up. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, is this the person or the place? And here's the difference, all right? I learned is the best way to remember it is that they are talking about both a people and a nation, people and a location. So in Deuteronomy, Israel, we're talking about God's people. So easy way to remember it, Genesis, we're talking about the person. Deuteronomy, we're talking about the people. But even when I found all of this information, my curiosity was not satisfied, because I watch a lot of videos and I come across a lot of people prophesying, or those conspiracy videos when they're talking about revelations and they're like, oh, the end is near, all of the Bible prophecies are coming true. And they would say, with everything happening in the news today with Israel. So I did a little bit of research. I remember that scripture that said that all nations will be turning against Israel. Now, I believe that is tribulation. So I'm like, okay. So I had to do some research, because the tribulation passages say all nations turn against Israel. And we're talking about the end of times here. And I was a little curious. So I was doing some research. And what I found is that it's actually a dual meaning. There is a literal sense and there is a spiritual sense. Because of course, we're not going to get a black and white here, right? We're not going to say, okay, no, this is how it really is, and this is the correct answer, and everything else is what they're saying is false. I don't like to do that. I don't think that's how it is. Who actually knows? But many Christians, they have mixed views, and some people think it's a real physical Israel that is involved in the end of times, but some believe it's part of a larger spiritual conflict. So I wish I had more of a definitive answer, but all I can do is give two different views from what I learned, and basically it's a literal view versus a spiritual view, which means God's people, the 12 tribes of Israel. And both are true in different ways. And if that sounds as confusing as I think it sounds, then you are correct. That is still confusing, but that's okay. We're not meant to know and understand it all. What we are meant to do is to love the Lord our God with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our might. Okay, so we are diving into our Bible study. We are in Deuteronomy 6, and we are being told to love God. We are being told to remember God. We are being told to be obedient, but most of all to remember. Do you guys remember everything that we've been through in Egypt? All of the plagues, all of God's miracles, all of our freedom that was won? Well, this new generation of Israelites do not. They weren't there. They have no idea what happened. They have no way of remembering. So in Deuteronomy 6, we are reading that's being commanded that they teach them diligent. It says, "And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." It's saying, no matter what you're doing, lying down, walking, getting up, sitting in the house, tell your children what happened in Egypt. Remember all of God's miracles, all of God's love that we have seen. And if we jump into chapter 7, we learn that Israel's chosen by God, and not because they're great, not because of anything that they did, but because of his love, just like us. We are no different. That is what grace is. We are given grace, not because of what we do, what we done, what we can do. It's because of God's love. So this is also speaking to us. And I can say that in chapter 7 of Deuteronomy, we learn a very important part that we are taught every day. Well, hopefully that we are taught every day. Hopefully we are told this every day, that we have been set apart as holy to God. We learned that we were chosen out of all of the people on the earth as his cherished personal treasure. We are already chosen. In chapter 7, we are once again reminded to avoid idolatry or any pagan influence. And I find it interesting here in Deuteronomy 7, and he says, God wasn't attracted to you and didn't choose you because you were big and important. The fact is, there was almost nothing to you. He did it out of sheer love for keeping the promises he made to your ancestors. God stepped in and mightily brought you back out of that world of slavery. And that was all the promises that he made. But also in chapter 7, right after, it's, yes, he is loving and he's loyal and he does all of this. And who love him and observe his commandments get those blessings. But there's a big but he also pays back those who hate him and pays them the wages of death. And it also adds here, he isn't slow to pay them off. Those who hate him, he pays right on time. And chapter 7, we're just getting that reminder that I need so many times throughout my day, that if I keep the covenants of loyal love that he made with my ancestors, if I be obedient, if I keep the commandments and the rules and regulation, then God will keep up his part. And his part is he will love you, he will bless you, and he will increase you. And I'll tell you, so far so good. All right, these have been kept up with. Lots of changes going on in my life. Lots of good things, lots of purpose. And I know that these blessings can also happen to you or other people that you know, friends or family. And as I was saying in the beginning, this is about remembering. This is Moses' last stand. Deuteronomy is the 5th book of the Bible and the final book of the Torah. And this is all Moses' final speeches to the Israelites. And if you had one last thing to say to anybody, what would it be? Well, Moses' last words are words of remembrance, words of remember God, words of remembering to be obedient, words of remembering to be faithful, and most importantly, words to remember God's law. I mean, Moses has gone through a lot, and I know we call Abraham the father of nations, but at this point, I'm looking at Moses as a father figure to the Israelites. He's gone through so much with these people, through ups, downs, and it's like he's been angry so many times, and it's just been for the greater good of them. He's not receiving anything in return. There's no riches. Well, actually there was, right? There was a promise of God's love. There was a promise of the promised land. And that was Moses' motivation. But what happened? His anger got the best of him. He snapped and he disobeyed God's law, God's words, when God told him to go up to the rock and give the Israelites water by speaking to the rock. And what did Moses do? He got angry and he hit the rock. He hit the rock twice. I told you in last week's podcast that there was a symbolic connection to Jesus Christ and that rock. I did a little bit more research on that, as I encourage you to do research because I don't know that whole story. So basically that rock symbolized Jesus Christ. And everything is written, guys. Everything is for something. And Jesus was already set to be crucified. He was already set to pay that price. He was already set to atone for our sins. And God knew this. And when Moses hit that rock twice, that is really what angered God. Yes, because he wasn't obedient. Yes, because he didn't listen to what he said, but because it wasn't necessary. Because Jesus already paid the price, and he only had to pay that price once. But Moses hit it 2 more times. 1, 2. And it was unnecessary, and that the symbolism was so important to him, and it really hurt him. And so what happens? Well, first, if that doesn't sound right to you, it is along those lines. I can't give you the scriptures to prove it, but as always, I encourage you to research it, because that is the symbolism to what happened there. It's very interesting, so definitely do some research and see what you can learn about that topic. But yeah, anyway, and so what happens? He gets punished, and his punishment, he will die before he reaches the promised land. He's not allowed to lead the Israelites into the promised land. And the devastation, the heartbreak he must be feeling at this moment. But yet he goes on for his final speeches, and he's saying to obey, be faithful, and follow God's law. It kind of reminds me of my family, a lot of my family on my dad's side growing up. And growing up, all of my friends' families, or families that I see on TV, or whatever the case may be. So they're growing up and they're being shown examples of who to be like when they grow up. And everyone's like, oh, why can't you be more like Uncle Johnny? Why can't you be like Uncle Tom? And I always laugh, because when it came to my family, it always became like, oh, you don't want to be like your Uncle Mark, or you don't want to be like, like Aunt Shirley. You don't want to be like your cousin. So Moses is standing up here. I'm
so
only
just
a kind of telling these people, be faithful, be obedient,
8,
follow God's law.
Or basically what
like
we've learned so far is it's not
like
just
me.
obedience.
This is what will happen.
We are learning that the relationship that we have with God is utmost important. And we are about to get into chapter 15. So 15 is very interesting. We have some sort of financial arrangement going on here. And it's not just financial arrangements we're talking about. All right, so in a nutshell, all debts between the Israelites that are not paid off within 7 years, they have a special debt relief program. Any debt that is not paid within that 7 years is canceled. Why do they do this? Well, it's a great program, and it's a program that is only between Israelites. It's not everybody. But this really helps the Israelites and the people to be out of poverty. If we had something like that, I think it would be a lot less poverty, because the idea is simple. You do not keep them in debt. That way they have a fighting chance. If you look at America today, how many of us are just swimming in debt? And an interesting point before we get into some of the scripture in chapter 15 is that what we see here practiced in Deuteronomy, we see a relationship to Jesus yet once again. So what's happening is we are reading that the people in Deuteronomy chapter 15, the Israelites, and they're practicing this financially. But later on, we see that Jesus practices this spiritually. That's right. What's happening here is the Israelites are canceling financial debts, physical debts. But we can contrast that to what Jesus does, and he cancels all of our debts. He redeems us, and he cancels what we owe, and he pays for all our sin. Just think of the benefits. What a society to live in. Like a society that isn't trying to keep you trapped under debt. A society that cares about your financial well-being. Say if you're anything like me, I definitely get carried away. Don't take me into a car dealership looking for a car. Be looking at nicest, newest car. Oh, I love cars. My weakness for sure. Yeah, so I believe that if I lived back in their days, I would be counseled, and I'd be going through what I'm going through right now. I'd be getting counseled on the Word of God, and I'll be thinking, okay, I do want this, but is it God's will? And I'm not completely ruling out that a super nice car would be against God's will. I don't know. But I'm just thinking out loud here. Yeah, could you imagine that? If it was, or if anything was, right? Whatever you feel that you need that money for, or you need to barter to survive. This is their system that they got. And God says, okay, you gotta forgive your brothers. You have to forgive. And there's a lot of family references going on here. You'll notice them throughout the whole chapter. Lots of family references, because they're saying, hey, we want to build us as a people. We want this nation to be built strong. We don't want you a captive to debt. And that is what they have to realize. I'm sure a lot of it isn't easy. I almost wonder if there are people who take advantage, because once that time comes, maybe if you time it correctly, you can, but that's my thinking these days. I don't know if they had such devious thinking they'd go so far as, okay, how long do I have to wait until the 7-year period is done? Or saying, okay, you know what, the 7-year period is almost here. Let me go out and borrow all that I can. Let me try to get knee deep in debt. I don't think that's how it is, because it's survival, and people they just really want what they need. They're trying to get on. They're trying to build their nation, and it's not like the guy is saying, "Oh, wait a minute, you already got, I don't know, what are they riding? Camels, horses? Okay, I don't know, maybe a horse. You've already got 2 horses. What are you doing? Why are you trying to get 3 or whatever it may be? I don't know what they're buying those days." And what this is doing is it's forcing them. It's showing them to value people over profit. And they are told to not be hard-hearted. It's open your heart, they're being told, and try to give even when it doesn't financially benefit you. Yeah, that's going against the grain, right? We're not always taught that anymore. Maybe as kids, but we lose a little something anyway. But they're being told to give even when it doesn't financially benefit you. And this whole thing, this command from God has a name. It's called the Sabbath year release. And once again, it didn't apply to all debts everywhere. It was just loans between Israelites, between brothers. It was to help relieve the poor. It wasn't for business exploitation. And I really think this is a great idea. There's no long-term poverty, and they're promoting generosity and compassion. Most importantly, I think, is that they are really showing each other that God is the most important thing here. Not their financial debts, not their financial gains, or their businesses, but God is. I just keep thinking how differently I could lead my life if I knew that my debts would be to be paid off in 7 years. But at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, but I also have to release those debts of other people in 7 years. So it's really is a give and take, but I do think that would be a great system. That would be so cool. One last point that I want to point out before we get into it is we're learning about forgiveness. We are learning about the kind of forgiveness that God gives, and the kind of forgiveness that we are shown every day, not just 7 years, Sometimes it may feel like 7 years, but that is why we get these reminders. All right, so let's start reading a little something from the Bible. We're on Deuteronomy chapter 15, and it says, "At the end of every 7th year, cancel all debts. This is the procedure. Everyone who has lent money to a neighbor writes it off. You must not press your neighbor or his brother for payment. All debts are canceled. God says so. You may collect payment from foreigners, but whatever you have lent to your fellow Israelite, you must write off. There must be no poor people among you, because God is going to bless you lavishly in this land that God, your God, is giving you as an inheritance, your very own land." Side note, what a reassurance. Any reassurance, right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but me, I'm living in a world of uncertainty day to day, every day. Nothing is known, nothing is for certain. There's no guarantees. There is no reassurance. Not even the reassurance doesn't even have to be 100% true. Like I don't even get that. Like there's this could happen, but I don't know. It might. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We don't know if what we're doing is for something or for nothing. And that can be very discouraging. I mean, that's just another reason to come to Christ. Another reason to rethink this religion thing. How great would it be for a little reassurance in our lives? A little reassurance. And we can get that. I get that every week. I know what I'm going to get when I go to church on Sundays. I know what I'm doing there, and I know why I'm going there. And that reassurance is to build the kingdom of God. And in return, I am promised these blessings. I am promised a promised land. And this is things that I work towards every day. This is why I do this podcast. It's why I spend hours and hours in church on Sundays. Maybe like 3 hours or so. But also, I'm involved in church activities throughout the week. So if you count my church hours spent in every week, it's a lot of hours, and it's a lot of work, a lot of dedication, but it's a great time, and I receive those blessings, and it is a great blessing, and I'm reassured that there is a reason that I do these things. Wouldn't it be great if we had such reassurance that we're reading here in chapter 15 when God says, repay or forgive those debts. Don't worry about it. Let it go, for you will be repaid. You will be paid lavishly, and you'll get your own promised land. And it's like, okay, yeah, definitely something I can get behind. Let's do it. Let's build this thing. Let's be positive. I don't have any more reasons to be negative. Let's do it. A little reassurance. That is what we are receiving here. That's what we receive when we open up the Bible, when we learn about the scriptures any way you want to, any way you can, videos, people, it doesn't matter. But yeah, okay, end of side note, let's get into it. Okay, reading from the Message Bible, it says, when you happen on someone who's in trouble or needs help among your people with whom you live in this land that God, your God, is giving you, don't look the other way pretending you don't see him. Don't keep a tight grip on your purse. No, look at him, open your purse, lend whatever and as much as he needs. Don't count the cost. Don't listen to that selfish voice saying, it's almost the 7th year. The year of all debts are canceled, and turn aside, leaving your needy neighbor in the lurch, refusing to help him. Okay, and I side note, I touched up on this, right? It's like, okay, yeah, we can forgive them, but what about those devious people who are counting the days? They're like, okay, this is the best time to go borrow money because all debts will be forgiven. That is what I'll do. And God is saying, yeah, okay, that could happen. Don't worry about it. Don't be so tight. Don't be so stingy. He is your brother. Give him what he wants. All right, end of side note. Actually, no. Another side note. Right here, next, it says, give freely and spontaneously. And I just read that and I think, wow. I mean, that sounds great to be on the receiving end of that. Like, okay, yeah, I really want a home, but money is tight and I don't have a lot to spend. I'm trying to save money for other things. And I go into the bank, and all of a sudden the banker says, oh yeah, absolutely. Here's all the money you need. There you go. And in fact, you know what? You might need a little bit more. There you go. Here's a little bit more. And I'm thinking, yes, this would be great for the receiving end. And then I started thinking, wait, how would that feel on the giving end? How would you feel if you had to give freely and spontaneously? Would you feel a little bit pressured? Would you feel taken advantage of? Well, let me rephrase that, okay? You got to think of it from a different perspective. Now, how would you feel if you gave freely and spontaneously and could afford it? You had the extra to give away. You had the means. You have whatever that person wants to give, and you have a lot of it. How would you feel then? It would be a completely different story, wouldn't it? I would feel great. I would feel, yeah, oh yeah, is that all you need? Here's some more money. I have plenty of it. Don't worry about it. Do you need more? Here, take some more. It's giving freely and spontaneously. And once again, it may not say that in black and white text, but you got to think it's implied, because this is the system. If you need the money, you can go get it. Everything is relieved in 7 years. People help others to get out of debt. There is no poor among them. That is the idea. So that is something to think about. Like, I would love to be in that position to give freely and spontaneously. If nothing else, I take that away and think, okay, that's the point in life that I want to be at. All right, end of side note. All right, we are once again reading from the Bible, and it says, if a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman was sold to you and has served you for 6 years, in the 7th year you must set him or her free, released into a free life. Don't for a minute forget that you were once slaves in Egypt, and God, your God, redeemed you from that slave world. Side note. So we are learning not only financial debts. It's not only about money. This is also physical slavery. And I spoke a little bit earlier about the connection with Jesus, because Jesus is the one that cleared our spiritual debts. So we're seeing a lot of debts forgiven. We are seeing how important it is to repay our debts. And I think that's something that we can take from this and apply to our modern day lives. Because a lot of this, especially in the Old Testament, it doesn't apply to us. But we take lessons from it and we learn from it, and we get that Holy Spirit from learning from it, and we take away a lot more than we think we do. And it benefits us greatly. So yes, we are learning that it's not only financial. If you have slaves or anything like that, on the 7th year, they are free people. Now this must be great for even the slaves. Imagine the productivity, right? They're not dragging around anymore. This is great. This is great. Oh yeah, I can do this for a little bit, and then for my freedom, because that is the system. And the morale in this society, I think, must be so great, which is really good. Really good. Okay, we're ending that side note and we're getting back to the Bible, and it says, if your slave, because he loves you and your family, has a good life with you and says, I don't want to leave you, then take an awl and pierce through his earlobe into the doorpost, marking him as your slave forever. Do the same with your women slaves who want to stay with you. Don't consider this an unreasonable hardship, this setting your slave free. After all, he's worked 6 years for you at half the cost of a hired hand. Believe me, God, your God, will bless you everything you do. All right, side note. Once again, we're getting that reassurance. Everything that he is telling us to do, he's saying, yeah, I know how it sounds. I know how you're going to feel, but I, your God, and he says this, I think, going off on another tangent, is when he speaks to other people about when he introduced himself. I am God, God of Moses, God of Abraham, God of Isaac. And he names off all of these people. And what's super cool about this is because now he's doing that for you. He's like, yes, I am the God of so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And you've heard of these people because they've been commanded by Moses when he says, make sure that you tell these people the stories. And now he's like, okay, now, and I'm God of you. And he calls you by your name. I mean, that's powerful. I thought that was pretty powerful. So anyway, yes. And he's saying, yeah, God, your God will bless you in everything you do, give you that reassurance. Because, just as we just read, we don't have to, or the slave does not have to leave you. If they think, I got a good gig here, I like these people, they're good to me, I don't have any problem with it, they can absolutely choose to be together. And that's another example that I see of agency, which, as I said before, a big gift that we believe that we receive from God. Probably our most greatest gift, other than the atonement of Jesus Christ, is our agency, our freedom to choose, which can be our greatest weapon or our worst downfall. So something to think about. We're ending that side note, and we're going to jump back into the scripture. All right, we're finishing off chapter 15, and we're talking about sacrifices. And it says, reading from the Message Bible, it says, consecrate to God, your God, all the firstborn males in your herds and flocks. Don't use the firstborn from your herds as work animals. Don't shear the firstborn from your flocks. These are for you to eat every year, you and your family, in the presence of God, your God, at the place that God designates for worship. If the animal is defective, lame, or blind, say anything wrong with it. Don't slaughter it as a sacrifice to your God, your God. Stay at home and eat it there. Side note, it's like, okay, that is the sacrifice. That is your meal, and eat it. I don't know, the firstborn, there's probably some significance to that. Probably some symbolism there. Jesus was the firstborn. Just off the top of my head, I don't know. There seems to be a big significant relationship to firstborns that we've been reading so far. And also, God says, and don't give me what you don't value. If it's injured, there's something wrong with it, whatever it may be, why would you give it to me? It's like Christmas. You rewrap your own things and then you give it to them, broken or not. Like, you're gonna regift your old socks with holes in them. It's along those lines. So it's like, if just don't give me that stuff. Come on, guys. Yeah, and he gives instruction. He gives instruction and reassurance on what to do here. And like I was saying, this whole chapter, I feel like, oh, how great would it be to receive instruction and reassurance. And then I thought, wait a minute, I did not always receive instruction and reassurance and guidance. I think that is a big thing that I got when joining the church, when turning my life around. And I always feel so weird when I say that, turning my life around. I always think of those videos that you see on YouTube or whatever it might not be, all of these gang members and all of these violent people or all of these crazy people that have turned their lives around, and they got this amazing transformative story. I'm not saying nothing is wrong with that, but it doesn't take all of that. Your story is just as amazing as anything, and it doesn't matter, how big or small that transformation is. Sometimes I just need that reminder. I don't know why, but it's like, okay, yeah, I get that. I didn't go through all of that or nothing so extreme, but that is what's happening here. And maybe it's the same with you. And also, there's nothing wrong with those people that are using their story, their transformative story. Gosh, I wish I remembered their names, but I can think of like two off the top of my head. And we don't have to do anything crazy or extreme. All we have to do is continue to learn, to grow, and to do the best we can to obey and abide and just love God and everything that He's built, everything that He's given us, everything that He's going to give us. And we just need to be reassured from all the reassurance that we receive that everything will be okay, and we can watch that transformative change take place in our lives. We can see our lives transform in front of our very own eyes. A lot of times maybe we don't see it as fast as others may see it, but others do see it, and that is another reason that we just need to stay on the path. Okay, we are moving on, and we are going to get into Deuteronomy 18. We are still in Deuteronomy, which is the law, the book of the law, basically. You know, Moses was the man of the law. Each of these books have themes, and what I'm learning is that this book is the law book. So I've got a quick question here. All right, so we are opening up Deuteronomy 18, and the first thing we see is that the Israelites are once again being called, but something interesting is happening here. They are not receiving any land inheritance. Now, I read this and I'm like, okay, what? I thought the Levites were like the top people, like the most holy, or, you know, the people with the most responsibility, the Levitical priest. But in Deuteronomy 18, it says the Levitical priest, that's the entire tribe of Levi, don't get any land inheritance with the rest of Israel. They get the fire gift offerings of God, and they will live on that inheritance. And right off the bat, I'm thinking, oh no, what did they do? Why aren't they getting anything from God? And that's just, my natural man is what they call it. We all have our natural man, and that's who we battle inside of ourselves. That's like, the old cartoon, good angel on one shoulder, the bad angel on the other shoulder, and they're just going back and forth like, okay, which one should I do? And that is the best way I can explain the natural man, because we all, no matter how hard, I'm not gonna try to speak for other people, but me, no matter how hard I try, I always have my natural man telling me, why not do it this way? Try doing it this way. This way is so much better. This way would be good. And it's just second nature. I think that's why it's called natural man. And the natural man goes against God's teaching, God's will, and everything that Jesus had atoned for us. And he's very prevalent in my life. Maybe that's a point to ponder. So anyway, my question is, we are reading that the Levites, or we say the Levitical priest, do not get any land inheritance. And me, my natural man, I'm automatically going to getting things from God. Why aren't they getting things from God? Isn't that what we want? I'm thinking, okay, this is a bad thing. But as I read on, there are verses where I'm thinking, okay, you know what? This doesn't sound like a bad thing. It's not clicking in my head yet. I'm still thinking, all right, God is their inheritance. That sounds great. But what did they do to not get a land inheritance? I'm so materialistic. And this is what made me read in more to this book. And it came to one question, what do we rely on most in our lives? Because our identity is very much shaped around our inheritance. What we have, what we covet, what is prevalent in our lives, our inheritance. So it really got me thinking, what do we rely on most? Is it money, materialistic things? Do we rely on other people? Do we rely on social media? Do we rely on our jobs? Or do we rely on God? And that is what it comes down to. Because instead of a land inheritance, they get a spiritual inheritance. If you need a little reminder of who exactly the Levites are, well, the Levites are descendants of Levi, and they were set apart for particular things, particularly spiritual things. They were set apart for worship, priesthood. They were the ones that were assigned to carry the tabernacle. And to this day, it is said that if the tabernacle or the Ark of the Covenant were found, only a descendant of the Levite tribe, the Levites, would be able to move it, care for it, etc. In fact, it is rumored that the Ark of the Covenant is still looked after by the Levite tribe. So that's pretty cool. And they're also set apart for teaching God's law. And we have read in the past just how loyal and spiritual the Levites really are. First, we see that they got separated by God, which is a good thing. after service for their incident with the golden calf in Numbers 18. And Numbers 18, verse 6, it says, "And I, behold, I have taken your brethren, the Levites, from among the children of Israel. To you they are given as a gift for the Lord, to do service of the tabernacle of the congregation." And that was during the whole golden calf incident. Speaking of the golden calf, they also had a very prominent role in Exodus 32, verses 26 to 29. And this is when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, I believe it was. And it reads, "Then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, 'Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me.' And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves and went unto him. And he said unto them, 'Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate through the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor.' And the Levites did it. The Levites killed about 3,000 men. And this is just another example of who the Levites were that we've already read in the past. So back to my question, what do we depend on most in our lives? The Levites, they depended on God. Me, I have a much more materialistic list, but I am now changing that, and it is not too late for you to make that change. Small little habits go a very long way. I was talking with a friend a couple months ago, and I was telling him how never in a million years would I have thought that I would be talking about the Bible, especially to him, or talking about the Bible in public, making a podcast about it. It was a very interesting moment. This was basically a childhood friend. And he told me, yeah, I can't believe it either. And it's a strong testament as to the changes that happen in your life when you let Jesus Christ in. When you open that door, it's all he needs, just a little crack in that door, and you just let him in, and you just let it go. And you just let the blessings come. It's all it is. So simple, but could be one of the most difficult things. So just a few more notes on why the Levites getting their spiritual inheritance is so important. Because I was just at a picnic the other day, and I was playing my ukulele, and I was playing one of my favorite songs, "Everything That Glitters Isn't Gold." I mean, side note on this, hold on. Like, even just that statement coming from me. I was just on a picnic the other day playing my ukulele. I had to stop. I had to pause. I was like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like me. And it's just even to right now, it's just a surreal moment. It's like, okay, that is something I would have just totally looked over. Like, that is what I did. That's what happened. But I would never have thought I would be talking like that. I don't know. Does that sound strange? Like, I was just that person who did not get invited to picnics, who did not do picnics with, regular people. I don't know. I always felt like my friends were always the band of misfits. And the changes are just amazing. Once you decide to make that change in your life and you accept Christ and go to church and start to try to learn. In our church, everything is about striving to. We know we're not doing it. We try to, but as long as we're striving to be better, sometimes we do, sometimes we are. But yeah, I just had to stop and pause. Just give a little laugh for a bit, because that is wild. I was on a picnic the other day with all of my good friends. It is great. That's amazing. Amen. Okay. Back to the side note. Ending this side note. All right. Why is that spiritual inheritance so much better than a physical inheritance? Such a greater blessing. Well, it's a good reminder that not everything that glitters is gold. There are greater things than materialistic things. And a calling, which is basically what the Levites have. Calling is a purpose, something that you do for free. A calling is not a passion. There's a difference between a calling and a passion. A calling is something that you were meant to do, that you were called to do. A passion is more something that you like to do, that you really enjoy it. And it's not saying that you can't enjoy your calling, but that's just the difference. But having that calling once again, can be a lot greater than gold. And you know what else can be greater than gold? The closeness to God. That is another reminder that we get from the Levites right in the beginning of this opening chapter in Deuteronomy 18, verse 1. A little nugget placed at the front door, a little bowl of candy before you enter in the mansion of wealth that we're opening up here. Help yourself. There's plenty more of that came from. Speaking of receiving little nuggets of information, just as the Levites offer to us, the Levites, the great tribe, the spiritual, godly, holy tribe that give us that guidance, that teaching of God. Well, they give good candy. They got some delicious, very sweet candy. But there are places that do not give out that sweet, delicious, good candy. So some places give out spoiled, rotten nuggets. We don't like spoiled, rotten nuggets, because that doesn't taste very good. Now, does it, precious? No, it doesn't. And that is actually what's happening next. Where do we get our guidance or information, so to speak, today in these days? Is it social media? Is it people who get their information on the internet from questionable sources? Is it some other thing, person or place that does not revolve around God's truth and only just popular thinking? Is that where we get a lot of our guidance? It sounds like it's where I used to get a lot of my guidance. Sometimes I still go over it, Well, that is what's happening here. Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. It says, when you enter the land that God, your God, is giving you, don't take on the abominable ways of life of the nations there. And God is saying, okay, you're about to be led into temptation. They're casting spells, they're holding seances, they're channeling with the dead. God is saying, do not do this. Do not do any of what that land or nation is up to. Be completely loyal to God, your God. Do not do anything with those other gods. For God, your God, is going to raise up a prophet for you, and God will raise him up from among your kinsmen, a prophet like me. Listen obediently to him. I got a little bit ahead, but I just want to read that part really quick. I wanted to let that simmer, and I can't hold it in much longer because that person is Jesus Christ. But like I said, I went ahead. Let me reverse, stop, rewind, back it up. Okay, here we go. So Deuteronomy 18, verse 9, do not follow that horrid land. And that land is the Canaanite land. They're doing all sorts of witchcraft, sorcery. They're doing all sorts of stuff. And why is God telling us not to do this, right? Because I think we covered, we could, he's not physically stopping us. And I think what we learned is that it is just best to follow God's commands, right? Why would you want to test that? And we're thinking, why not? Well, because we're bypassing the trust in God. To have full obedience and trust in God, these are the things that we need to do. They're trying to control the future. They are trying to gain power. But here, all we need to do is trust in God. He said, I have your future. I have your power. And he's got a great plan. Do not mess it up. And it's as simple as that. And this part of the book may remind you of Exodus, or that movie, oh my goodness, that DreamWorks movie with Moses. Was it The Prince of Egypt? It was something like that. I only recently saw this. Like I said, I am a new convert. Even though that's a popular mainstream Disney movie, I did not watch it. Not because I was against it, opposed. It's just never crossed my path. But anyway, so, this can resemble a part in that movie, or Exodus 7 through 12, where, Moses is showing all God's miracles. But then the Pharaoh's like, what? My magicians can do that same thing. And they try to imitate the miracles, but they just could not match God's power. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Speaking of interesting, isn't it interesting how we can still see people today trying to seek a little control through insights that they get from places other than places that are filtered through God's truth. For example, horoscopes, tarot cards, sometimes we get obsessed with signs. And I don't know, I like to think that we do receive signs, but an obsession with looking for signs could be different than actually receiving a sign. What I mean by that is, when I receive signs, what that I think, it is a strong presence. It is a unmistakable, undeniable thing that hits me. And, I've never had an obsession with signs, but I would imagine that is all you're focusing on. You're not focusing on God's truth, God's love, or obedience to God. You are just, looking for signs. It kind of reminds me of Balaam. Balaam was looking for signs. He kept going to God, saying, hey, this is what they want to do. Is it okay if I do it? They said this. Is it okay if I do that? And God already told him what he wanted, but in his heart, he was looking for something else. And he received signs as big as a Mack truck, but he's only interested in the signs that he was looking for. An obsession, greed, power, status, and that's just something I wanted to point out, something that we see today. All right, jumping back in, Deuteronomy 18, verse 15. God, your God, is going to raise up a prophet for you. God will raise him up among your kinsmen, a prophet like me. Listen obediently to him, hearken to him. And this is Jesus Christ. We are looking at a little glimpse into God saying Jesus is coming. And you might be thinking, Scott, why do you think God is talking about Jesus? Jesus was going to be a prophet just like Moses. Well, there are some similarities. There are similarities that are very interesting, and I've actually got them here. So let's go over some similarities between Jesus and Moses. Now, we read earlier in Exodus just what Moses had to go through. The time that he was raised, they were killing off the boy babies, and Moses escaped that fate. He escaped death. And does that sound just a little familiar to what Jesus did? Because as a child, Jesus too had to escape persecution or execution. And why? Because the King Herod, learned of a prophecy that the great Messiah, or his doom, was coming from a child born in that time. And so King Herod said, you just kill all the men, kill all the boys, kill all the baby boys, and let's end that threat. And once again, Jesus escaped that fate, just like Moses did in Exodus. How about, let's go for another one. What else did Moses do? Moses, once again, in Exodus, he freed the slaves from Egypt. He ended slavery. He followed God's command, and through God's love and power, was able to deliver them from Egypt. And you know what? Jesus delivered us from something as well. What else did Jesus deliver us from? It's pretty big. Yeah, Jesus delivered us from sin. So we have two deliverers. Moses spent 40 days on a mountain. Actually, I think that he spent a few different times in his life with 40 days on the mountain, right? It's like 40 days come down, 40 days go back up, and then come down. I don't know. I think it happened a few times. And who else spent 40 days in the wilderness? Yep, that's right. Jesus Christ. They both had 40 days out in the wilderness. That was their time frames for these time spurts of out in the wilderness, out on the mountain. How about the contrast between the Old Testament covenant versus the New Testament covenant? What are the differences? We don't sacrifice anymore. We don't atone through sin through animal sacrifice. I believe there's a lot more that changed. We are so lucky for the new covenant. There are a lot of rules that we've been reading, a lot of things that I think would change a lot of people. So what is the similarity between Moses and Jesus in that matter? Moses was the lawgiver, right? Like I just said, Deuteronomy is the law, laying down the covenant. And we learned this up until now from Moses. He gave us what the Old Testament covenant is. And what did Jesus do? Jesus gave us what the covenant of the New Testament is. So they both acted as like mediators. And I guess that's what a prophet is. They speak God's words. And Moses spoke of the old covenant. He taught us what the old covenant is. Jesus taught us what the new covenant is. Speaking of law, Moses the law man and Deuteronomy the law book. All right, that's a clear distinction of giving the law. Moses clearly is all about the law. What did Jesus do? Maybe Jesus fulfilled a lot of that law. So we are being promised a prophet like Moses. Moses, the great prophet, so unique. He speaks directly with God, the deliverer of the covenant, and the mediator between God and the people, the deliverer from bondage. And in fact, we are reading that the people had requested the mediator. And this is something that I completely forgot about. Yeah, it says right here, verse 16, "This is what you asked God, your God, for at Horeb, on the day you're all gathered at the mount, and said, we can't hear any more from God, our God. We can't stand seeing any more fire. We'll die." This reminded, I don't know if you remember the story that I told about my dad. It was, if there was a problem, I did not want my dad to solve it. That was the last thing I wanted to do. If there was a mess to be cleaned up, like my room, like if I had to clean my room, I would clean my room, because if I did not clean my room, my dad would clean my room, and I did not want my dad to clean my room. I did not like the way he did things. His idea of cleaning was grab the big black trash bag and everything gets thrown away, and this reminds me so much of that. It's like, okay, no, we don't, I don't want to, we can't hear anymore. Can we find somebody else to maybe be a little bit more gentle? And we were seeing a reference from this, and this was a reference from Exodus 19 through 20, and it's again being referenced here in Deuteronomy 18. They're saying, okay, this is why we need a prophet. We need a prophet like Moses. We need somebody that we can listen to. We need a voice. We need a voice in our lives. Have you ever thought that? Have you ever thought, I need a voice in my life? We as people, we're hardwired to worship something. What are we worshiping? Is it ourselves? Is it somebody on TV? Is it an influencer? Is it our culture? What sort of voice are we asking for? The people are asking for a prophet that can mediate what God wants so they don't have to deal with his fire. Are we seeking out that same voice that they are? Are we seeking out the prophets of God? Who truly speaks for God in your life? That is something we need to ask ourselves. Who truly speaks for God in our lives? And when the broken-hearted people living in a world of greed, there will be an answer, let it be. All right, chapter 18 is a great chapter. I had a lot of fun with that one, but we are gonna jump right into chapter 29. Now, chapter 29 in Deuteronomy, it kind of reminds me of Moses is trying to explain, basically, he's trying to paint a picture. And the picture that I am receiving is one of those scenarios where there's a father and a son, or a daughter, or a mother and the kid. Anyway, they're trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. So the dad or mom is pushing the child along on the bicycle, and they're running along, holding the child the whole time, when all of a sudden they let go and the child is riding the bike all by themselves. I feel that is the picture that is being painted. I could be wrong. That's just what I'm getting. Right? I think that we all get a different picture of what's happening inside of scriptures. And I can explain why I think this. I'm going to be jumping around for a bit, but just stick with me. All right, Deuteronomy 29, verse 4. And it says, "But God didn't give you an understanding heart, or perceptive eyes, or attentive ears, until right now, this very day." So right then and there, he's saying that you did not realize all of this. He's telling them, he's reminding them of all of the massive trials that they just witnessed and the great signs and the miracles. So we're going to keep that in mind, and now we're going all the way down to the bottom, all the way to the last verse, 29. And it says, "God, our God, will take care of the hidden things but the revealed things are our business. It's up to us and our children to attend to all the terms in this revelation. And I think it's so appropriate that it's at the end of Deuteronomy 29, because that is the painting of the picture where the parent lets go of the seat and the child now must pedal that bicycle. He's saying, hey, don't worry about the hidden things. The hidden things God will take care of, but the revealed things are our business, and it is up to us and our children to keep up the terms. And what did he just say in verse 4? But God didn't give you an understanding heart or perceptive eyes or attentive ears until now, this very day. He's saying today is the day. You've seen the trials. You've seen the miracles. You've seen the great signs. Believe, Israelites. People of Israel, believe in God, your God, God Almighty, the God that has so much love for you and who has brought you out of Egypt. He is saying, you may not have noticed these things until right now, but look at all the proof that you've seen. The next verse, verse 5, it says, I took you through the wilderness for 40 years, and through that time, all the clothes on your backs didn't wear out. The sandals on your feet didn't wear out. I mean, I guess a case could be made as this metaphorical kind of thing. I think it's a literal sense. I think these are miracle clothing and they didn't wear out. And it's like, have you ever been told that, I have socks older than you? Well, I don't get told that anymore. But if I were back in those days, maybe, because that's 40 years, right? 40 years through the wilderness, and the sandals on your feet didn't wear out. The clothes didn't wear out. 40 years is a long time. 40 years is a long time. And to not buy any clothes or sandals or have it wear out, not even worn out. And he's just giving them more proof. He's saying, okay, this is it. I'm letting go of the seat. You ride this bicycle, and you ride this bicycle beautifully, and you ride it into the sunset, and you and your children are now responsible, and you must follow these terms and live a great life. So they're seeing all those miracles and saying, hey, you've seen these. You know what's going on. You don't need any more proof. The proof is on your back and on your feet, for you've been through the wilderness for 40 years with me, and you still have not worn out. And there is something going on here where they see these miracles physically, but they are failing to see them spiritually. They are spiritually blind. Are there times in our lives where we can look and say, that is something that I should have taken more note of? That is something that I should have known to take more care with. I know in my life, there are many times where I'm thinking, I've been spiritually blind, or I am spiritually blind. But I am making great strides because we are studying the Bible, we are learning more, and I am beginning to see spiritually. And now I'm thinking globally. So we can see it and still not believe it. A lot of times I think that is why we don't see a lot of miracles in our days. Maybe there are miracles going on, but we just don't know about them because, look at all of this that's happening in the book, right? They see it, they don't believe it. And there are so many examples where if we told people the truth, they wouldn't believe it anyway. I'm sure you've heard that. You heard that many times. And sometimes I think that's so true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we can prove or something like that. You see something on social media and you think it should affect you more, but it doesn't. And could you imagine, what if you were shown proof? What would you do? What would you say? How would you live then? Or would you write it off? Honestly, I think I might write it off. Depending on the situation and the circumstances, I don't know. Something to think about. So here we have Moses. He's preparing the people. Now remember, Moses doesn't have much time left. We're nearing the end of Deuteronomy, and Moses' time is ending. And he's trying to prepare the people. He's saying, okay, look, you've seen these miracles. Now you need to follow the terms. You don't need any more proof. They're almost hardened. And let me bring up Matthew 13, verse 1. And it says, at about the same time, Jesus left the house and sat on the beach. In no time at all, a crowd gathered along the shoreline, forcing him to get into a boat. Using the boat as a pulpit, he addressed the congregation, telling stories. As he scattered the seed, some of it fell on the road, and the birds ate it. Some fell on the gravel, and it sprouted quickly. So when the sun came up, it withered just as quickly. Some fell in the weeds as it came up. It was stranded by the weeds. Some fell on good earth and produced a harvest beyond his wildest dreams. And as Jesus is telling them the story, he says, are you listening to this? Really listening? Like, I know you may be hearing this, but are you listening to this? Are you really listening to this? And the disciples came up and asked, why do you tell stories? And Jesus replied, you've been given insight into God's kingdom. You know how it works. Not everybody has this gift, this insight. It hasn't been given to them, but it's been given to you. It is a gift. Whenever someone has a ready heart for this, the insights and understandings flow freely. But if there is no readiness, any trace of receptivity soon disappears. That is why I tell stories. To create readiness, to nudge the people toward receptive insight. In their present state, they can stare till doomsday and not see it. Listen till they are blue in the face and not get it. And this is basically what Moses is saying. Be ready. He is creating readiness. He is nudging the people toward receptive insight. Just like he said, just like Jesus said in Matthew 13, verse 13. That's why I tell stories, to create readiness, to nudge the people toward receptive insight. In their present state, they can stare till doomsday and not see it. Listen till they're blue in the face and not get it. And here Moses is saying, you've seen the miracles. You see the clothes on your back, the sandals on your feet. Just as us, me especially, like I can confidently share the gospel with somebody and not wonder, oh boy, I don't know if that's going to work for them. Or, I'll tell you this, I'll share with you this, but it might not do any good for you, because I had been nudged toward that receptive insight. Readiness has been created, and I am tired of staring till doomsday and not seeing it. And I don't want to listen till I'm blue in the face and not get it. I've done that. So many times you hear, your life before Christ has been a waste of time. I hear that so many times, and every single time I hear it, I'm thinking, that's so true. So true. What was I even doing back then? I couldn't tell you. I'm thinking, and I can't tell you. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. There was no purpose. There was nothing. And that is why I can relate to the Israelites. And Moses is saying, hey, you've seen this. Hey, guys, this is what we need to do. This is what's happening. Be ready. Alright, now that chapter is short and sweet, but I kind of look at Deuteronomy as like this roller coaster I just been on, because we're nearing the end. And now I can confidently let you know that the emotions and things that have happened in this book of Deuteronomy have been a roller coaster. And I feel like this next chapter coming up, chapter 30, is the crescendo, sort of say. Or, if you're on a roller coaster and you're climbing up, you get to the bottom and you're and you get all the way up to the top and we're about to drop. And I think that is what's happening here. I think that is the feeling that I'm getting from Moses here. We're still addressing the people of Israel. And Moses is prophesizing. He's saying, hey, here is what will happen. When you're out among the nations, God has dispersed you, and the blessings and curses come in just the way that I've set them for you. And you and your children take them seriously. I like this part because it's saying it's not going to all be easy. And I think we know that. No matter what path we choose, it's not going to be easy. And Moses is saying, with blessings and curses as they come. And skipping ahead, we're going to just jump down here really quick. And we are going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 30. And this is verse 19. And it says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I place before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so that you and your children will live. It's so great to have options, isn't it? We have choices. We've got options. And Moses is saying to choose life. And he even goes so far as to saying that not only for you, but your children will live. I find that part very interesting. As people, how often are we enough reason to choose life? I mean, I can think of many times in my life where I had a choice and I did not choose the best choice because I was the only one at stake, maybe. So many times that do I hear people driving down the road. They're trying to make a red light and it goes from green, it goes to yellow, it's almost red, and they punch it. They zip out because they gotta make the light. Now, how many times have you heard, oh, I wouldn't have done that if my kids were in the car, or maybe they didn't go for the light and they decided to stop at yellow, and they said, oh, I would have went for it if you weren't in the car. And it's interesting to think that we don't think that us alone is a good reason to choose life. It's not enough reason to put in thought and effort into the things we do. But here we are, and Moses is saying in verse 8, and you will make a new start, listening obediently to God, keeping all his commandments that I'm commanding you today. A new start. How great would that be? I can tell you right now, I got my new start and it is great. And if you are feeling immersed or you are consumed in the scriptures day to day, and your church isn't only lasting an hour or two for the entire week, and you're bringing that church home with you, then I think you know exactly how that new start feels. And this is the promise of, well, not only Moses that he's prophesying, but this is God's promise. And in verse 8, you will make a new start, listening obediently to God, keeping all his commandments that I'm commanding you today. I was laughing the other day because it's like I'm going through this Bible and I'm just reading it, and I'm just reading it so carefully, and I'm trying to decipher all of these things. What's being said here? What are they trying to tell me? And it's like, what are we doing when we read the Bible? And we're just like, okay, we're just trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure this life thing out. Nobody knows what's going on in life, but here we have a manuscript, and we are just going through this thing, and we're like, okay, oh no, this is what it says, and it will promise. And hey, guess what? It's true. It happens. And this is why we read the Bible, and we're just searching through it. It's the manuscript. Don't ask me how it works. We're trying to figure this thing out. You were holding up the instructions, looking at it sideways, upside down. Maybe it's too close. We'll take it away from our face a bit, or maybe we got to bring it in closer. We'll give it a good look. But we're trying to figure it out. What is this Bible thing? And we are finding a lot of good information, and which keeps us searching, which keeps us diving into it. Like, what else is in here? What else is in here? Verse 8, Deuteronomy 13, and you will make a new start. Boy, even though I feel I got my new start, I still look for a new start. I still want that new start. Still searching for that new start. So, listening obediently to God, step 1. Step 2, verse 10, and he says, nothing half-hearted here. You must return to God, your God, totally, heart and soul, holding nothing back. Now, that could be a bit more difficult than it sounds, right? I am working on that. So, no, it's like we're there, but we're not totally there. But I feel like it's nothing of our fault. Like I just said, we're searching this Bible. How do we do this? Something so simple. I don't know. How do you do that? How do you hold nothing back? I feel like I'm not holding anything back, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot more to do, a lot more I can grow, a lot more that I can put in, feeling like I am half-hearted here. So we're just searching, what is going on here? What can we do? And that's actually reminding me of a problem that I have, or maybe had. I had this issue. I had this issue where I thought people were smarter than they were. That sounds terrible. Maybe I'm not saying that correctly, but with my friends and stuff like that, I would get frustrated. I'm trying to tell them something something, why aren't they understanding what I'm telling them? Or why do they do things the way they do things? It just never made sense to. Or when I used to do my projects, I still do my projects. I'm in the middle of one, but I've had a lot of these attempts at these ventures, these projects that I do. And when I ask friends for help or support, and they fall very short, very subpar, they're lacking a lot that I found, and I just got frustrated. I get frustrated, and it's like, are you doing this on purpose? And I would get frustrated, get angry, and it's like, I expect them to understand this, expect them to understand what I'm understanding, what I'm thinking. But the truth and the bottom line is they don't. It is not uncommon for others to just not know, not get it. And we don't know what we don't know, and we can't help that. And I feel like that's vice versa, the other way around. When I interact with people and they are expecting one thing, but I am failing their expectation. And I think that sometimes there is that barrier where we expect people to know, but we just don't know. And I think for that reason, I have learned a lot of, I guess, grace, a lot of patience. And here we are reading about Moses telling the Israelites how to have this good life. Why is he telling them how to have this good life? Because they don't have a good life. I mean, it doesn't say that in black and white text, but it's applied. He's telling them how to have this good life. It wouldn't make sense if they're already happy, they've got a good life, they're not seeking any enlightenment, they don't wish things were better. That wouldn't make sense. I wouldn't be searching through this Bible day after day if my life were already great and I was completely happy with the way things are going. That doesn't make much sense. So, he is telling them that this is how you restore everything that you lost. Because he's prophesying and he's saying you will lose everything. You will go through these hard things. But if you come back to God, he will have compassion on you. This is verse 3. God, your God, will restore everything you lost. He'll have compassion on you. He'll come back and pick up the pieces from all the places where you were scattered. Jumping over to verse 6, God, your God, will cut away the thick calluses on your heart and your children's heart, freeing you to love God, your God, with your whole heart and soul and live, really live. He's saying we're missing something. He's saying we're out and about, but you're not out and about. And he's saying we're going to free you to love God. We are in captivity. We are in the captivity of negativity, and we are being freed once again, and we will continue to be freed over and over again because God, our God, will get us out of here. Verse 4, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 4, no matter how far away you end up, God, your God, will get you out of there. Oh, goodness, that I can relate to. I'm not exactly saying like a literal certain physical space, and you're just, it could be. Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, it was a literal place that I just thought, get me out of here, get me out of. And just a time in my life that I did not want to be at. And I thought, get me out of, do not want to be here. And I was delivered. But that is a story, once again, I will probably say for a later date. And here it says, no matter how far away you end up, God, your God, will get you out of there. You might think, oh, I'm too far gone. I'm too far gone. Or I've done all of this. But no matter how far away you end up, he will get you out of there. Verse 9, Deuteronomy chapter 30. God, your God, will outdo himself in making things go well for you. You'll have babies, get calves, grow crops, and enjoy an all-around good life. Yes, God will start enjoying you again, making things go well for you, just as he enjoyed doing it for your ancestors. I don't know about you, but I can sure use things going well for me right about now. I mean, things haven't been terrible, but there are times when I just felt, oh, you know what, things could go better. And that is when I will put in my earbuds or something along those lines, and I've got the audio Bible, and I just let it play whatever I'm studying at that moment, and I would just let it go. That's a little trick that I do at work, especially at work. Sometimes, I'll listen to some music, but you get those days when you feel things aren't gonna go well. And when I get that feeling, that's what I'll do. And just an interesting thought I thought I'd bring up. During my study, I found that biblically, life means more than survival. It means thriving. It means flourishing. It means having that covenant relationship with God and aligning with God and His design, His commandments, and all the rewards and blessings that's come with it. Children, crops, calves. And that is what they're referring to as life. It's not like, I hate it when those are, there have been times when I'm like, okay, I do this, but what is in it for me? Okay, this sounds terrible. I mean, yeah, I'm a terrible person. But it's like, trying to spit this out. Have you ever been told to count your blessings? You're angry, you're not in a good place, and you're not living a biblical life. This was me before the Bible, and it's like, there are things I'm grateful for. Of course, my family, and then they'll be like, what about your life? Aren't you happy you're alive? Like, of course I'm happy I'm alive, but do I want more than just being alive? Of course I do. And I think that is a big difference between the biblical term life and to a life that I saw it as without the Bible, without Christ, without God. It was different meanings, right? Before my church days, it was just life and death. Here or not, here today, gone tomorrow. But as a convert, and now that I'm returning to God, and He's slowly bringing me back and giving me things that I've missed out on. And so a lot of, side note, little tangent here. Well, not really. It's relevant because we're talking about Moses. Although we're jumping the gun, this kind of is before what we're gonna talk about in the next chapter. Anyway, so what I was just saying, it's like God is returning things that I see that I lost, that I feel I missed out on, just as God does in the next chapter. Little spoiler alert, as He shows Moses the promised land that he cannot enter. Is it a kindness or more of a disciplinary action? Kind of like this is what you missed out on. And anyway, I can relate to that. The transition as a convert, slowly seeing your life come back. Because I'm telling you, there is difference. There's a difference. Either if you are a convert or somebody else that's a convert, hopefully that's a reason to not give up your missionary. But yeah, life in the Bible means flourishing, living that covenant life with God and getting your life back and flourishing, having that relationship with God. And having that relationship with God means changing some habits so that we can help our spiritual direction. Maybe changing relationships, maybe changing priorities, or the way we think. All of these small things that we do in our daily life shape our spiritual direction. And we see every day, that choice that we just read about. And Moses gives us the answer, right? Choose life. Now, what does life mean again? Life, He's not talking you down from a building. He is telling you to choose flourishing, to choose thriving. You want to do good in life. You want those rewards, and it's okay to have them. He's telling you how to get them. You want that relationship with God. And this is choosing life. That is chapter 30 in Deuteronomy chapter 30. All right, we're moving on. We are on our last chapter for this week's study, our Come Follow Me. And I just thought it'd be good and important to point out that a lot of times I reference my life with the Bible, and I'm just talking stories with you guys, giving examples. And I came across something the other day, and I thought it's important to repeat that the Bible isn't about us. The Bible is for us. And I just hope that I'm not confusing anything or making otherwise, because when we read the Bible, hopefully we're relating to it and we're using the stories and the examples and applying it to our lives. But I just hope I'm not painting a picture where you're thinking, okay, this is about us. It's about us, and I don't know what kind of consequences that would have, but I heard that, so I'm sharing that, and I think it's a good reminder. It's for us, but it's not about us. All right. Okay. We are on the last chapter, and we are on chapter 34. This is a great chapter in Deuteronomy. This is a chapter where a lot of people get emotional. There is a lot of emotions happening here. This is when Moses dies, and there is a lot going on. And yes, it is true. It is a very short chapter. It's about 12 verses I see in my Message Bible, but there is a lot going on. All right, so what do we know? What do we know so far? We should know everything because we're at the end of the Deuteronomy, but some people are just joining us. Maybe they missed out what we were doing before. So, little recap. Moses is dying, and they're about to enter the promised land, but guess who can't join them? That's right. The person who led them there. The person who have shown them miracle after miracle. The guy who talks face to face with God, who came down from the mountain, who had his face glowing. They're like, oh, this guy is the holy of holy leaders. For sure, God's favorite. And what is happening? He is being punished. He cannot enter the promised land. He cannot lead those people to the promised land that they were promised all that way. And this is because Numbers chapter 20 verses 1 through 13, you will read when Moses dishonored God. And how did he dishonor God? He disobeyed. He was told to speak to the rock, but he ended up hitting the rock twice. And as we said before, that is a symbol that represented Christ. You know, we get the water of life from Christ. Jesus is our rock, and that was a symbolism there. And he hit him, and Christ was already set to be crucified. And God said, you don't need to hit my son. You don't need to punish him any further than he has already. He's already paid for the atonement. What are you doing hitting him 2 more times? And he took it very bad, and he's punishing Moses, and that is his punishment. You know, we can learn, even as a great leader that Moses was, even the great leaders that are in our lives, they remain accountable. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe some people don't see their leaders being held accountable as much as we'd like them to, right? But ideally, that's how it should work, right? They're in that position, they are held accountable. And just like Moses delivered the people from slavery, all those miracles, face to face with God, and he's experiencing this consequence. And that was just a quick little recap. All right, we're getting into it. Deuteronomy 34. Okay, verse 4. And it says, Then their God said to him, This is the land I promised to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, with the words, I will give it to your descendants. And I've let you see it with your own eyes. There it is, but you're not going to go in. All right. Okay, let's think. What is going on here? What are they trying to tell me? Every time it's what's going through my head. I'm searching the Bible. Anyway, so we are at that time, we're at that point, Moses is being shown the land. He said, this is the land that I promised. And I said, I will give it to your descendants. And I've let you see it with your own eyes. There it is. But you're not going in. What's happening here? I feel like there's a lot happening here, but it's coming to me slowly. Okay, so he's telling Moses that he made a promise. Okay, he's like, oh, what movie is that? You know, I made a promise and I keep my promises, or, oh my goodness, it's gonna drive me crazy. Anyway, okay, so he's telling Moses that this is the land, and I told your descendants that I will give it to you. So guess what? I'll let you see it. This is why I'm showing it to you. There it is. And with that, there it is. Okay, here you go. I'm giving it to you. But you're not going in it. Because what's the number one thing we know about God? Is that he keeps his promises. He keeps his covenants. And he is making good on the promise that he made Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And he is making good on this promise. And he said, I told them that I will give it to you. So here it is. But you're still not going to go in. And that is what God is thinking, feeling, saying along those lines. What is Moses? What's going through Moses's head with this verse right here? Is it, yes, there it is. I've wondered if this was real. I've wondered if we would ever get to the promised land. Oh, I'm so relieved. Now my people will get their promised land. Or is it more of like is it more regretful? Does he have any regrets? Is he going through some sort of roller coaster of emotions right now. It's like, oh, why can't I did all of this? I did all of this right for you. I just wanted this promised land. Things have gone so wrong for me and I got angry. You can't just show me it. Why would you just show me it and not let me go in? Somehow I don't think that's the reason. That's not what's going through his mind. I think that he's become more obedient. Can we go as far to say that he is comforted? Not only because they finally found it. Maybe he's glad that he led his people there. Can we say that he is reassured? Ooh, I like that one. He's being reassured. They're not saying he's reassured. In fact, the next verse says he dies. Just like that. He dies. But if we look at this through a different lens, and because, I don't know, is it safe to say that he had doubts? He had, doubts of what's happening here. Even though you see it, we know people see things and don't believe them. And maybe if you even go through things, you don't believe. Maybe you do this great wonder, but you still have that doubt in your mind, right? We can't say it's completely out of the question. Now, can we say that, okay, he's like, oh, this whole thing. And then can we say that this whole thing has now been confirmed that it's not been for nothing? That everything that I've thought is true, and there is life after death. All of these great promises. And maybe by God showing him the promised land that has been the subject of this whole thing, the promise finally being fulfilled, maybe he has a sense of peace. Because let's be truthful here, death is super scary, right? Is death what brought us here in the first place? To Christianity, to religion? A lot of people, that's the case. For me, I can say that. Wasn't the main underlining reason that I finally decided to join Christ. But it's a huge hurdle that every day I'm preparing. Isn't that weird? I thought about this about a month ago or so. Well, I think about it a lot, but I thought about it in depth about a month ago. It's like, what are we doing? We're just preparing to be comforted during death, during the time of death. I was speaking with somebody from my elders quorum, and it was a fellow teacher, and he was saying, I was telling him about how important it is to reflect on life through the lens of dying, or other people's lives through that lens. And I wish I remembered what he said, but he brought up this Latin term. He's a super smart guy. I'm not a super smart guy. I'm telling you, this takes a lot of research and a lot of resources that I read from, and I get all these ideas, and it takes a lot. So I'm not a smart guy. I don't know if it comes off I'm smarter than I am, but anyway, he is a smart guy. Professor William and Mary, and he's got all of these credentials. Super smart guy. And he's giving me this Latin term. I can't tell you, but it means to not forget death, and it means to not forget death. And he gave a pretty good story on it. Like I said, I couldn't tell you, I couldn't recite it back to you, but it's a thing. He told me that it's a thing. There's a phrase for it and all. To not forget death. And I feel like that is a lot of what I do. And I was wondering if that's what you guys do, or people do in general. Or we're just preparing for that day. We're dreading it, all our heart, all our might, and we're just, oh my goodness, what in the heck are we gonna do? What's gonna happen, right? And honestly, this is something I thought as a kid. Like, I would lay down on my trampoline late at night. Probably wasn't that late at night as a kid, but it was dark. And I just look up into the abyss, the sky, all the stars, and just imagine what it would be like. Close my eyes, and the silence, the nothingness, vast space, dark. Such a surreal and scary thought, even to this day. But maybe that is why we're searching for the light. We're searching for the light. We're searching for that promised land. So many times through this chapter of Deuteronomy, or even, since to the Bible, the Old Testament so far that we got up to, they talk about the promised land. And so many times I found myself thinking that the promised land is not a place like they were thinking, or they thought, or it was to them a literal place. For me, in my head, right now at this moment, I'm thinking, that could be heaven. That could be the afterlife. That could be something more. That could be something that is not a total dark abyss with nothing happening, just no brainwave, no sight, nothing going on, just not existing, no life. That's a scary thought. So that's how how I've been looking at it. It's like, okay, maybe, hopefully I can be led to a promised land. Maybe, hopefully I'm being led to a promised land. Now, with all of that said, what I'm trying to say, the point I'm trying to say is, maybe Moses thought that way too. Maybe Moses was scared of death, and God showing him this promised land that he's been telling him this whole time. It could be like some sort of comedy movie. This guy's being told to do all of these things because there's a great treasure at the end, and he's not believing it, and all these bad things happen to him along the way, but at the end it all comes together and it's all right, and it all makes sense, and everything will be all right. And isn't that the message of the Bible? I feel, be strong, don't be afraid, everything will be all right. I think if I had to sum it up, that would be the main underlining theme, what the Bible is about. Have courage, don't be afraid, everything will be all right. And I guess that is what I would think is happening to Moses right now. It sounds a bit cruel, doesn't it? Like, okay, led him all this way and he's not letting him in. But we see here, he's fulfilling his promise. He's not letting anybody down. He's a trustworthy God. You can put your trust in. He promised the ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh, here's a good nugget. Here's a nice, delicious, juicy, golden nugget for you. Okay, I just thought of this. If God is so adamant at keeping his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he's keeping up his word right now in verse 4, saying, there it is, my promise has been fulfilled. Is it just because he's a trustworthy God that keeps his promises? Or is it because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are still around, and that is the reason that he's keeping his promise? Otherwise, why would he? Why would it matter? Unless he still has that covenant relationship with them after death. So it might sound cruel, might sound he's all this way, he can't go in. But what if it's not over? He's like, yeah, right now you can't go in, but there's still more to come. You might think this is the end, but I've got another surprise for you. And I think that's the reassurance that Moses is getting from God right now. He's like, oh, okay, he's saying you're absolutely correct. You're right. I need to learn to trust in you more. I need to learn that everything is be okay. I need to learn that everything will be okay. I need to learn to have courage. And that, I think, is a good way to go. Good way to go out. With God on your side. With God fulfilling his promises. Because in the next verse, verse 5, it says Moses died there in the land of Moab. But right after that, it says Moses, the servant of God, just as God said. So I'll read that whole verse again. It's not a long one. Verse 5, Moses died there in the land of Moab. Moses, the servant of God, just as God said. That is powerful, isn't it? Moses died there. Big sparkly letters. Moses, the servant of God. Might as well be a placard on a big, nice wooden desk. And he spins around on his chair as you enter the office and you're reading this placard. Moses, the servant of God. How's that for a promotion? How's that for a job title? What if I said that you've been promoted and you are the servant of God? Do you know the job description? Do you know the pay? Do you know what you're accountable for? Are you qualified to lead a team? What if I said that job is higher and it's yours? You can become that servant of God. Just as God said Moses will be his servant of God. Moses, the servant of God title. And that is who Moses is. That is who we are. That's who we can be. It's who we are trying to become, striving. Next verse, God buried him. You're buried by God? Really? That is amazing. What a funeral. And here's the kicker. No one knows where his burial site is to this very day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. And in verse 7, it says his eyesight was sharp. He still walked with a spring in his step. Yeah, we can take this literally. We can say, oh yeah, 120 years old, you'd expect him to be blind. You'd expect him to be bedridden. And it's saying, his eyes were sharp. He still walked with a spring in his step. That is the literal perspective, or is it a spiritual perspective? Because just as we read a few chapters ago, and it says you could be staring at it till you're blue in the face and still not see it. We're talking about the spiritual. We're talking about your spiritual belief. We're talking about the people of Israelites, the people of Israel seeing all these miracles and still not believing. So if we're taking that context and we're applying it to this verse, this last chapter of Deuteronomy, and he says his eyes were sharp, meaning he's not looking at it and not seeing. He now sees it. He is looking at the miracles and he is now believing. He's sharp. and next walked with a spring in his step. Is he now encouraged? Is his fear of death now lessened? Does he now have more courage to face that final act of death? If we die, how eager are we to walk through the tunnel of death? At the moment anyway, not too eager. Not something I'm particularly looking forward to. But it says he walked with a spring in his step, right? Nothing is coming to a surprise to Moses. It's not like, what? I'm gonna die. He's been told this chapters and chapters ago. God told Moses already, you're about to die. And so none of this comes to a surprise to Moses. And he's saying his eyes are sharp, walk with a spring in his step. Yeah, it could be both literal and spiritual point of view. And when he died, can you imagine all those years, a lifetime, 120 years? Can you imagine having a spiritual leader for even 40 years? Someone at church that you really looked up to, and then gone. Life changes. Life has changed as they know it. Moses, the great Moses, is no longer there. Nobody thought it would ever happen. We don't think we can lose our loved ones, and then it happens. Could you imagine? Maybe you can imagine. And the people of Israel wept 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses came to an end. And we'll get into more of that. It's not like, okay, we're moving on. God has a certain view. He's got like a policy for mourning. And we'll get more into that with Joshua. Speaking of Joshua, verse 9, Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. The people of Israel listened obediently to him and did the same as when God had commanded Moses. Verse 10, no prophet has risen since in Israel like Moses, whom God knew face to face. Never since has there been anything like the signs and miracle wonders that God sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh, to all of his servants, and to all his land. Nothing to compare with that all-powerful hand of his and all the great and terrible things Moses did as every eye in Israel watched. End of chapter 34. It's a short one. It's a good one. A lot happening. And just in that one verse 9, it's basically giving a introduction, basically prefacing the book of Joshua, which is next. Well, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I had a great time. I've learned a lot during this week of our Bible study, and I thank you for joining us. And I thank you for joining me, and I hope you join me next week on our next episode.
Have a great day. Aloha.